now we're going to move on with a joint presentation, but perhaps just done by one person. So it's a pleasure to welcome Emily Grundy, who's going to be talking about life course social interaction and participation, and her colleague Anne Bowling is sitting in the audience and will no doubt answer all the difficult questions.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, and this is, I'm very pleased to be part of the MODEM project, and I'm working with Anne Bowling in our element of it, as well as all the other collaborators. And as Jill has said, Anne can answer all the difficult questions. I think we've already heard from Lucia, and indeed from Carol, about the importance of social support, friends and neighbours and family. And the element of the project that we're going to be working on is looking at how life course patterns of social interaction and activity, how they might be related both with cognitive function in later life and also with use of services. So we know that there are a whole range of very complex factors that evolve over people's life courses that influence their later life health, their resources available to them, and their cognitive function, and also how they deal with possible changes in cognitive function. And these include a whole range of socio-economic, environmental, family, health behaviours, and people's initial health endurance. And increasingly there's a recognition that an important element that affects people's status and well-being in later life arises from patterns of social support and participation. So there are studies, for example, which have found that people who in general have been rather isolated through their life, it appears that their cognitive function is poorer in older age. But of course it's extremely difficult to disentangle the complicated pathways that might underlie that association. And the sort of theories or behind this are, first of all, if you have a lot of social interaction throughout your life course, it might have some direct effect on your cognitive function or your cognitive reserves just through the sort of stimulation of that kind of activity. Or it might have indirect effects because through that kind of interaction you may learn better coping strategies. So for example, CPAS studies, which I heard a bit about from Carol, some results of those show that better educated people, they weren't necessarily at less risk of getting dementia and so forth, but they were better able to cope, develop compensatory strategies, so that if you can't remember something, you try to remember to use lists. And it could be that those patterns of social interaction throughout your life make you able to cope better, even if there are some changes in your actual what's going on in your brain. But there are, and we also know that social support and social networks influence people's health-related behaviours and their physical health, and that's very important because of this comorbidity with health. But it's very difficult to actually get to the bottom of these kind of relationships because there may be other effects too. People who we've heard movingly from Lucia about her father, that his contacts with his friends sort of diminished when he developed dementia, and even at a much earlier stage people may become less likely to go out, they may become a bit nervous of it, or they're at risk of getting isolated. On the other hand, when they're very at a stage where they actually need this kind of critical interval care, you may find that their family rally round, and so again it's hard to disentangle these associations. And there are also all kinds of other things which influence both social interaction and health, including cognitive function. So basically the first part of the work that Anne and I and others will be doing is to try and unravel a little bit this relationship between social participation and interaction and cognitive function by looking at both possible sort of direct linkages from life course social participation to physical and psychological health, which may influence cognitive function, linkages from that direct to cognitive function and coping strategies, and also these sort of reverse linkages. And so the main questions we're going to be asking about these patterns of social interaction, are they associated with cognitive function in early and later old age? Does the type of interaction matter? Is it important that you're going out for meals together, or perhaps doing physical activities, or something that involves some mental stimulation? And very importantly too, these networks, these convoys of support that people attract or acquire over their lifetime, how do they help in coping in the event that people do suffer from some cognitive impairment in later life? So that in terms of access to help from family and friends, and also use of and access to formally provided services. And we're going to use two sort of longitudinal data sets for this. One of them has tracked the sort of life courses so far of a group of people born in 1 week in 1958. And of course they're a bit young at the moment, but even so there may be changes that are evident that could be precursors of cognitive function both then and later. And the advantage of that data set is that we know all about these people right from their birth weight and their health at birth and health in childhood and performance in school and marriage, family, children and so forth, right through until sort of early onset of old age. And then we're going to be using the English longitudinal study of ageing to look at changes after the age of 50. This is a study of people aged 50 and over who've been followed up now for kind of 6 waves and a whole range of tests, including physical measurements administered. And fortunately, both these data sets at various points have used the same measures of cognitive function. So it's kind of like we're going to try and be using both of these together to answer some of these questions. So the outcomes we want to look at is, first of all, we want to look at what are the sort of life course things that are associated with cognitive function at age 50, particularly these social interactions, and beyond that, and then also sources of support and use of services among those with cognitive impairment. And I think this is very important. We've heard the importance of a good fit with the right kind of services and the right kind of support. And it may be that people's social linkages are very important in enabling them to get that, should they need it. And we're going to do a kind of fancy statistical modelling to try to take account of the various many problems there are in making the most of these data without over-interpreting them, and importantly, providing results which can be input into the models which MODEM will be producing, which we all hope will help inform the planning and improvement of services for people with cognitive impairment and dementia in the future.